Hi, I'm Kelly Yang and welcome to my book club. I am so excited to answer all your questions about my book New From Here, which your teacher has sent me. By the way, I'm coming to you from my hotel room in Fishers, Indiana. I had the distinct pleasure of speaking at the Hamilton East Public Library yesterday, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to answer your questions. First of all, thank you so much for reading with me. It is amazing to hear from all of you. So the first question that we have today comes from Ms. Nancy Link's class. How did your real life plane ride compare to the plane ride of the characters in your book? Well, the actual plane ride experience truly was very, very dramatic. As we were taking off, everybody looked out the window, people were celebrating, people were like, yes, we made it, we got on the last flight out of Hong Kong, we're going to be safe, we're going to America. So there really was the sense that we had gotten like on a lifeboat off the Titanic. Of course, little did we know, the virus was actually going to come to America and pretty much all over the world. But it really felt very strange. It was a really interesting, it was an interesting plane ride. And I remember looking out the window and looking at the Hong Kong island getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And number one, missing my husband and missing my dog. Which brings us to another question that we have, which is your dog real? This comes from Miss Brown's class. And the answer is yes, I do have a dog. His name is Cody. He is 5 years old and he is a Labradoodle. And you can find a lot of videos of Cody on my Instagram page, but he is beloved. And I really missed him so much because he was my writing dog. And so he would lie down by my feet while I wrote all my books, and the idea of being away from him was just so sad. Okay, another question I have is, what character in the story did you relate to the most? This comes from Mr. Kennedy's class, and I would say I really relate to the character of Mom because it was hard as a mom taking the kids to another country last minute on my own. But I really felt like it was the best thing to do for our family. You know, my mother bear instincts kicked in. I felt that we were going to be safer there, and I wanted to take them. I also wanted them to have this American experience that, you know, I grew up with. My parents immigrated to this country when I was 6 years old. And I remember, you know, those first few weeks, all the butterflies, starting at a new school, feeling a little bit like a fish out of water, but also making a lot of great friends. And of course, my kids had a totally different experience because they already knew English, which was great. And, you know, they had a lot of the American customs down. They kind of knew they had come here for the summers all the time. Still, it wasn't easy. You know, it wasn't easy, and as you read in the story, there are definitely some challenges. My class was wondering, this is from Ms. Reisner's class, my class was wondering if you and your family ever experienced something like what Knox's family experienced, where they were left in the middle of nowhere by an Uber driver. Oh, that's a great question. So we did not get stranded by an Uber driver. However, as soon as we landed, we definitely noticed the looks, and they were everywhere. People looked at us funny, you know, people were trying to distance themselves from us as though we had cooties. And it was hard, you know, it was hard in the grocery store, and it was hard just even walking down the street sometimes. It was a tough time for us, but one of the things that it forced us to do was have these conversations, these difficult conversations as a family about, you know, identity and when you feel a little bit like you're on the outside and what that means, and how do you get over that feeling, and how do you belong in a country where sometimes you're feared, and whether that fear makes any rational sense at all. And you know, sometimes life is hard, but being able to talk about it makes you so much stronger. I'm really happy we were able to have those conversations. Another question, how did you pick the characters' names? This is from Ms. Pennell's class. She's actually right here in Indiana. I would say that was a tricky one. I definitely knew that I wanted the characters' names to reflect all the places we had been as a family. And so Bowen is named after Bowen Road, which is an actual street in Hong Kong, where I would take my kids hiking on this street. It was a really long street, you can walk down it. It was beautiful. Leah comes from a neighborhood in Beijing where we've also visited. My family is originally from China, so we would go over there all the time, and Leah comes from a little play on this one neighborhood in Beijing. And finally, Knox is named after Knox Beach in Richmond, California. We were living in the Bay Area when I wrote the book. I am originally from Southern California, but I went to college in Berkeley, and we did live in Berkeley in the Bay Area for many, many, many years. And there is an actual beach called Knox Beach in the Bay Area. So if you ever want to go and visit it, you can go and visit it. Okay, another question from Miss Goldberg's class. What was it like being an author during COVID? Oh, that's a great question. It was so hard. So normally as a writer, the thing that you really need and you live for are those peaceful, long stretches of time. And usually for me as a mom, as a working mom, that happens when my kids are in school. Well, during COVID, they weren't in school, not physically anyway, and I had 3 kids to take care of on my own while I was trying to write. So I had to find all sorts of creative places to write, creative times to write. I remember writing a lot in my closet, in the laundry room, in the car. I mean, you name it. I would find a little secret hiding spot and write there until, for a few hours until the kids found me. And yeah, it was really, really tricky and it was really difficult. But you know, I got through it, and that is why you have New From Here. It is a book written about the pandemic during the pandemic. It is a miracle that we have it. Okay. A question from Ms. Calendar's class. Do you prefer America to Hong Kong, or do you like them equally? Wow, that's a great question. There are so many pluses and minuses about both. I would say I love the food of Hong Kong. I really miss the food, but I really enjoy the freedom and I enjoy the outdoors of America. I love going hiking. I love going to the beach. Another question is from Miss Brown's class. Did your family really decide to leave immediately and only have one night to pack to move to America? Wow, it's a great question. So in reality, I think we had 3 days. The news was starting to become more and more like terrifying that this thing was happening, that it was so close. And it reminded me of something called SARS, which you guys could maybe look up as part of research in your class if you really want. But SARS was another big virus that swept into Hong Kong, but it was contained. So it didn't really go anywhere else, which was great. But the problem was that in Hong Kong, it did cause a lot of destruction and people died. It was really, really scary. And I remember living through SARS. My husband was in Hong Kong at the time during SARS. He remembered it. And we just felt like, oh my God, if it's anything gonna be like SARS again, we have to leave. We have to take the kids and leave. And of course, unfortunately, he couldn't come with us. So by we, I meant like I had to take the kids and leave. But yeah, we then decided, okay, well, we're going. I'm going. 3 days. Told the kids to pack up 3 days. So my question to you guys is, what would you pack on this trip if you had to suddenly leave and go somewhere to another country in 3 days? What would you pick? What kind of amazing prized possessions would you pack with you? Another question from Ms. Morehouster's class is, how long did you think the virus was going to last at this point in the story? Honestly, I thought the virus was going to be over with in like 2 months. I really did. I don't know how many of you guys also thought the same thing, but I first of all really truly did not think it was going to come to America, but also I thought that if it did come, it'll be gone in like 2 months. You know, definitely by summer of 2020, it would be all over. That's what I thought. Of course, I was silly and it's not true. How long did this book take to write? This is from Coring Lin's class. So I think it took several drafts. The first draft was much more focused on the actual developments of the virus, which when I started out writing it, seemed novel. But then I realized by the time the book came out, nobody would care about what's going on in this virus because we've all lived through it. We're sick of it. And so I decided to rewrite the whole thing, focusing more on the family. Really, this is a family story. The virus just happens to be in the background, in the backdrop of the story, but truly this is about the relationships in the family. It's about all those dynamics. It's about that sister, brother, sibling, rivalry, all of that. And it's really about the bond, One of the things that I appreciate about the pandemic is it did make my family stronger. It did make force everybody to get along and bond with each other because we were stuck in the same house together. And I wonder if that's true for any of you guys. Did the pandemic bring you closer together with your family? That's my question to you. Finally, another question is, what motivated you to write this story? I would say that the thing that motivated me to write the story the most was I wanted to capture this time. It is a time when so many of us had to show tremendous courage just to get through our day. From your teachers and your librarians having to show so much courage to come to school, then to suddenly learn how to do online teaching. That was so hard. All of that. And for the kids to, have so much resilience, to get through these very turbulent times. They were up and down so many ways. At so many points, you felt like you weren't sure when things were ever going to be back to normal again. And that was a hard feeling to live with, and then you throw in the anti-Asian hate, you throw in all these different layers that make life even harder. But then I also really wanted to capture all the little joys and all those little funny moments that we all experienced during the pandemic. It truly was an extraordinary time. So I think that was it. I wanted to capture it. It was important to me. It is a part of history. It is something that we're going to tell our kids about. You guys are going to tell your grandkids about. And guess what? We got through it. We got through it. We got through it with courage. We got through it with resilience. And we got through it with a lot of humor. Final question. Did you read the book to your children? What did they think of it? Yes, I did show this book to my kids and they loved it. My daughter especially loves this book. She thinks it's her favorite book ever. It is her #1 read. My son Tilden, who the character Knox is based off of, and yes, all of that stuff about ADHD was very much real. It very much mirrors what we as a family have had to go through and still are going through. He felt like the book really helped him in feeling a lot less alone. And I hope that it helps you guys as well. So keep reading. I can't wait to hear your questions from next week. I will be back at my house in California. So until then, happy reading, everyone.